Aside from yesterday's pump, the cryptocurrency market has been experiencing a grim mood for several days. There is an absurdly unpleasant atmosphere. Everything is falling apart, and Litecoin is one of the few coins that simply, everything is plummeting, and Litecoin has been holding its ground, barely losing value. In fact, it even grew at a time when everything else was plummeting. So let's see why this one of the oldest cryptocurrencies literally in the world is doing so well. Why is it dropping so little when everything else is doing mediocre? And what does the future hold for cryptocurrency? So we will analyze the price potential of Litecoin in this cycle, upcoming events, and its price action. The video won't be extremely long, so I encourage you to stay until the end. Leave a subscription on the channel and a thumbs up because a lot is happening, especially after yesterday's announcement of this cryptocurrency reserve by the United States. The question is when. The question is in what amounts. These are things we don't know. For now, it's really just informational noise. It's speculation that it will be grand, that a lot of funds will be involved in individual cryptocurrencies, but as you saw, the mere fact that they included Cardano, XRP, Solana, Ethereum, and Bitcoin caused the entire market of cryptocurrencies to start rising. It simply exploded and shot up absurdly high for a period of one day. So such situations can bring a lot of good, but only if it turns out that Trump is not deceiving us again, not leading us by the nose into temptation, and not causing all those values somewhere to be simply manipulated by him in various ways. Presented will not be extremely low and will not be values that we simply consider a joke. Because what good is such a reserve if it turns out that, for example, they will be loading it, so to speak colloquially, I don't know, $1 million a month then. It would be pennies, it would be nothing, and then the market will be embarrassed and it will have no impact. It will even have a negative effect. So only when it is confirmed that this reserve will be created in this year, which would consist of the entire cycle, and that these values will be truly significant, then I will consider a positive news. For now, it is short-term speculation, but it helped to bounce back from the lows of altcoins and Ethereum or Bitcoin. What you see on the screen nicely influenced our longs. Here I'm sharing with you a Bitcoin long and one on Ethereum. Both are in a very nice profit, even despite this current small pullback, so it looks great. We managed to catch practically the very bottom, because on Bitcoin we only dropped another 1%. Lower, on Ethereum probably around 2%, so practically from the very bottom. And let's get on with the material. So the question is, considering these recent, simply exquisite price performance of Bitcoin, can we say that this dinosaur, let's call it that, has a chance to become the dark horse of this bull market, a cryptocurrency that will play a leading role, that will perform well? Most might not know this, but this year Litecoin has already increased by 14. Celebrates his birthday. He is only 2 years younger than Bitcoin, and it's like a lighter version of it. Let's say it was indeed created as one of the first cryptocurrencies that were appreciated. It's often called digital silver, so it has always been in the shadow of its older brother, Bitcoin, but it is not completely forgotten. Today, I'll also show you why we'll analyze its potential. I'll also check for you what might contribute to it surpassing its ATH from 2021 at the level of $413 still in this bull market, because now it would be almost a 300% return on investment if such a situation were to occur. I myself hold Litecoin at a spot price of $110, and we also have a long position from 114. So now it's around zero, but it was already at $140 with a very nice profit. So I have a considerable exposure to this token both on the spot and on leverage, and I openly say that I myself would like it to perform as well as possible in the coming months. That's why recording this video is very interesting to me, as well as the fact that ETFs on Litecoin are potentially in play and approaching. As you can see, the date is public here, which also suggests that something might still happen. And the price change dynamics will be quite aggressive, so let's check how Litecoin has been performing over the last 3 months in comparison to other tokens, because we see that today, in particular, is the worst day in 3 months. Listen, ever since the last fiscal quarter, there hasn't been a worse day for altcoins, which are simply performing the worst in comparison to Bitcoin, because only 15 or 16 out of 100 have over the last 3 months have surpassed Bitcoin again. And you have them listed right here on the screen. When they surpassed, it was only slightly. Only a few of them, especially new coins, performed better. Only Trump and the exchange token from BitGet achieved 100 to 150% each. Otherwise, it's weak, so just over the weekend, which is also worth highlighting, Litecoin was in the 11th place here, meaning it wasn't in a small negative as a token that dropped the least, one of the 5 or 6 least at the moment, from the rest of the 85 altcoins, but it was at a 22% gain. It was somewhere here in the ranking, but over the last several hours, it faced a correction. It is currently down 12% over the last 90 days compared Bitcoin's valuation, and it holds the 21st place in this entire ranking, which is still a positive event considering The fact that the remaining 79 coins have a worse performance than it does. So, just in February, from its worst to its best moment, it gained 75%. So take a look. Litecoin performed better in February than the rest of the cryptocurrencies. The question is, where did this come from? Why did this dinosaur generally grow when the rest of the market was terribly sluggish? The answer is simple, namely that the main trigger for the growth, which gave momentum to Litecoin, is the fact that we have a 90% chance that by the end of this year, that is, within the next 10 months, Litecoin will have its own ETF in the USA, just like Ethereum or Bitcoin, right? Not Solana, not XRP, not Dogecoin, but Litecoin, which is digital silver, will most likely be the third cryptocurrency in history that will enter Wall Street. Last week, Canary Capital's application for a Litecoin-based ETF overcame another hurdle and became the first to be listed on the DTCC website. Although being on this list does not guarantee that the SEC will approve the pending ETF application, it indicates that the issuer is preparing for this moment. And this is crucial for us because this platform serves as the main clearinghouse in the U.S. financial market, settling about $10 trillion in securities transactions daily. And both the Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs have appeared on the list of active and pre-launch ETFs on the DCC just before SEC approval. And more often, there are voices suggesting that Bitcoin is facing the same fate. Because on this list, as you can see, it's already there. We have, for example, Litecoin channels, ETF, and such a ticker, such a symbol, simply appears. And this growing speculation about the acceptance of applications for Litecoin is also manifesting on-chain as we have an increase in the number of token holders, increases in volumes, and the number of transactions. Traders are clearly positioning themselves for a potential ETF on Wall Street, specifically in the USA, because we see a clear signal that the number of Litecoin holders is increasing. In the last month, the group of leaders has grown by 12%, which is a lot, especially when compared to previous periods. Look at the momentum that this last trading month has gained. In terms of the number of holders, we have over 500,000 addresses that are actually holding this Litecoin for a little over a month. So the situation is heating up for now. It's not yet an explosion of momentum, but it's gaining speed. That's what we see here. These are data from an interesting platform called Into the Block. We see that the net flow of large Litecoin holders over the last 6 months has been mostly positive, with the exception of one sharp drop at the beginning of February, because over the last 20 days, the change has remained at a level of plus 2% and a bit more. So for Bitcoin whales, this means that they are increasing. These are not retail investor wallets, but those of institutions and large, prudent players who simply know what they are doing. And the question we can ask ourselves is whether this means that smart money is starting to see the investment potential. Litecoin, they are just getting started when it comes to investments. There might be a chance for this because other data, as you can see here, also confirm a sharp increase in the share of whales. Currently, they control almost just under 11% of the total Litecoin supply, holding over 8 million units, and the concentration of whales in the last 6 months has increased from 7.7 to 8.2 million Litecoins, which is a 10% increase. Meanwhile, the number of tokens in the hands of retail investors has increased to 39 million units, so we see that retail is also accumulating and holds over half of the circulating supply of Litecoin, which is healthy for the project because the tokens are not controlled by a single consolidated handful of whales. And here's a cherry on top regarding on-chain. Take a look. Large transactions on the network have significantly increased, as has their total volume, because in the last 6 months, the total volume of large transactions has risen from 3 billion to 10.5. This is a significant increase, about 200%, and as a result, we have growing interest in the network, increased concentration of whales, which could favor a potential major comeback of this cryptocurrency, especially in light of the ongoing work on the ETF. And now a brief description for newcomers about what this project is all about. Generally, it is based on proof of work when it comes to its operating mechanism. Just like with Bitcoin, Litecoin is also mined, but miners verify correctness of transactions. So here, it's the same as with Bitcoin. Litecoin offers a faster block generation time. A different hashing algorithm than Bitcoin is somewhat improved, and a lighter version, a bit cheaper. Yes, it scales better, but since we're on the topic of mining, it goes like this. It turns out that mining Litecoin is often a very profitable business because there is a lower difficulty of extraction. Firstly, lower energy consumption often means a higher return on investment due to the lower competition among miners in the network. And this is potentially bullish information because if something is a profitable business, then there's a good chance that the Bitcoin mining industry will sustain itself for years. And the token, historically speaking, was launched in 2011, in October, created by former Google programmer Charlie Lee. And this is a kind of divergence, or fork, of Bitcoin's source code that is almost identical to Bitcoin, with key differences such as faster block generation times, a higher maximum token supply, and a different hashing function. But that's roughly it. So since Bitcoin is created as a better, faster adaptation of Bitcoin, is anyone actually using it for payments? Well, let's see. It turns out, yes, because there's something like BitPay, for example, one of the oldest platforms processing cryptocurrency payments, published a report for the year 2024 and showed that there were 600,000 transactions. The most frequently used cryptocurrency platform for payments was indeed Litecoin. One-third transacts 200K. It surpassed Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, USD, where even Bitcoin had only 130,000 payments compared to 200,000 for Litecoin, and the most frequently purchased goods and services here using cryptocurrency included sports equipment, precious metals, VPN services, computer networks, and a bunch of other things, which are listed here for you. There's also an emerging competitor to Booking, which is Travala. They offer their clients payments in Bitcoin. And thanks to this, you can simply, besides using fiat, use Litecoin to process some hotel bookings, for example, or some tours or flights. Many companies also accept Litecoin for purchasing gift cards. For example, Uber, Amazon, or Nintendo also offer this option. So, that's interesting. I don't know if you were aware of this. Litecoin is only in certain countries. Not everywhere, as it's also regulations, but this exists is interesting. So besides being a good means of payment, Litecoin exists as it. It's simply meant to protect, just like everything we invest in, to protect from negative impact of inflation. So since Litecoin is very similar to Bitcoin, it also has a specific supply limitation mechanism, namely halving, which can positively affect the price in the long term. Every 150 seconds, miners extract new tokens, and initially when Litecoin was launched, the reward was 50 Bitcoins per block. After mining another 840,000 blocks, which is about every 4 years, the reward is halved. And this will continue until the reward drops to zero, which is in 100 years. It is strikingly similar to Bitcoin. And that was the aim. So regarding the halvings, the first took place in August 2015, the second in August 2019, the third in August 2023, and the fourth will take place sometime at the end of July 2027. So we are still quite in between each of them. So here it doesn't play a big role, but Litecoin was designed as a currency with a constantly decreasing supply. So ultimately, this will simply make the coins, these tokens, become more and more scarce, because as Litecoins become rare and the demand for them simply increases, it can potentially serve as a hedge against inflation, since their price, according to market equilibrium, will tend to rise. On the other hand, fiat currencies are subject to inflation due to supply constantly increases, but it's known that in addition to the number of units in circulation, interest in a given asset must also be added. The market moment, precisely demand, emotions, and where we are. Because the fact that there will be less of something doesn't automatically mean it will increase. A lot of other things need to accumulate for us, so I hope that in the long term, you've seen how Litecoin functions, what potential lies within it, and how it looks. Litecoin has survived multiple markets. It has been on this market for almost a decade and a half. Its supply is decreasing and maxed those 184 million units. So when it comes to the long term, you can judge if this is an interesting token or not, especially since there might be an ETF, so it seems safe because it has a long history of existence, so to speak. And as a result, this is how the price performance of this cryptocurrency looks. In 2017/2018, Litecoin cost $360. In the last cycle, it cost around $380, $400, then a double top. We almost reached 300 again. And now we haven't surpassed the value of $150 even once in this cycle, so we'll see how it looks after the halving. Some things have also been unlocked. We see that the last halving roughly marked the bottom for Litecoin. And that's how it looked in the previous cycle. The halving coincided with a bear market period, so it really didn't help that much. It didn't trigger any increases, so many people simply believe that this halving is often already priced in, doesn't have the same impact as Bitcoin, especially since Bitcoin sets the trend for this market anyway. Which direction will we go? Regardless of whether Litecoin has a halving or not. But the reduction in supply should naturally lead to a price increase sooner or later, if the general market conditions are favorable and as long as demand remains the same or higher than before the halving. So as we see, 3 halvings are behind us. Each of them took place during the transitional phase between a bear market and a bull market. The price action was similar. Let's say it looked quite good here. Here it looked the best, but we had to wait almost 2 years for a huge period of growth. People who bought Litecoin between 2015 to 2017 had a really great opportunity, getting it for a few dollars and being able to make about 100 times that, which of course is rare for those who did, but there was such a chance, so the price of Litecoin rises before the halving. Then we have sell the news, which is often a trend here as well. And then the analogy is that the biggest increases in each cycle occurred only during the alt season, so we might not necessarily expect large pumps of Litecoin after its halvings, but still from a long-term perspective, The constant supply limitation can have a very positive effect on the price. But there's another noteworthy thing, because since Litecoin has a limited supply, it can potentially protect investors' capital from inflation. It is often compared to silver, because in the world of cryptocurrencies, no shortage of grand stories, and even greater hopes. And Bitcoin has earned the title of digital gold. Everyone likes it to surpass its market capitalization. Well, it's a bit short by about 10 times, but Litecoin is compared here to silver. The market capitalization of silver at present is about $1,800 billion, or approximately 1.8 trillion in Poland. And when it comes to Bitcoin, the market capitalization at the moment is just under $9 billion. So, quickly calculating, we're missing about 200 for Litecoin to rise enough to match silver, and Bitcoin needs to increase tenfold to match gold. So, hypothetically speaking, comparing to individual assets, we have a 20 times larger space for potential growth. If theoretically, Litecoin were to match the valuation ratio to how much the gold to Bitcoin pair costs, then simply, of course, silver has a much lower capitalization than gold. Yes, Litecoin is a smaller cryptocurrency than Bitcoin, but silver is also more accessible to retail investors due to its a much lower unit price. So it's the same with Litecoin. If someone wants to have one or a few units, they are more likely to buy Litecoin rather than just Bitcoin, because entry threshold is higher. Aside from the fact that you can buy a fraction, of course, some people prefer to psychologically own several units, and then Litecoin can become a more attractive asset, especially since it will be the cheapest ETF in terms of the nominal unit price of the token among the three that will likely operate side by side. And where Litecoin will be the third right after Bitcoin and Ethereum, it will likely be so. This is not confirmed, but prob just highest chance. So if new people come in and see that there is such an asset, read about its history. They might be more convinced by Litecoin than by Ethereum itself. So when it comes to long-term price charts for Litecoin and silver, they are also very similar to each other, because this is also an interesting analogy. Of course, the date range is different because the duration, let's say the existence, of Litecoin also looks different. This needs taken into account. But this is a kind of zoom out that you can compare. So on the left, you have a 1-month chart for silver. On the right, a weekly chart for Litecoin. And looking at these charts, it's hard not to notice a certain common pattern, because both silver and Bitcoin exhibit similar cycles of sharp increases and dynamic declines, followed by periods of consolidation. Moreover, the prices of both assets continue to rise in the long term, and that is the trend maintained. It's just that it is indeed a long-term trend. And in the 21st century, in the age of digitization, it's possible that both silver and its analogous digital counterpart, Litecoin, might be considered as such that they will experience price appreciation sooner or later, within a time frame of several to a dozen years. Regular accumulation of silver, Litecoin, could be a good investment strategy, especially since Litecoin, especially during a bear market, as we showed in the ZPP strategy. It tends to behave similarly, and you can make quite a bit of money from it, even when the price is falling. Moreover, history shows that Litecoin has indeed provided its investors with good returns in the past. Of course, one might say that back in the day it was like that. It used to be profitable. Those were nice values. But let's analyze, just as a hobby and in the form of a case study, the price action in previous cycles. Maybe we'll find something, because probably not many of you watching my channel were in the crypto market in 2017. When I started, unfortunately, with little money and unfortunately with foolish mistakes. I have no cryptocurrencies from that period anymore. But do you know what it was like? The Wild West. So, indeed, Litecoin made almost 100 times profit from March 2017 to December 2017, which means it made 80 times profit in 9 months, which is a beautiful result. You could have accumulated it for $3, $4, $5 in March 17th, and then in December of the same year, sell it for $360. But few managed to do that. Throughout December and January 2018, you could sell Bitcoin for around $200, so there was time for the price to hold steady to make a solid profit. Those who didn't manage to sell and held on until 2021 could also come out well, minimally. Then the drops in 2019 were down to $40, and in 2021, 4 years later, Litecoin gained momentum again, this time on the wave of global interest in the crypto market. Macroeconomic conditions were favorable. Central banks were pumping trillions into the economy during the pandemic, and concerns about inflation prompted investors to look for alternatives. So crypto was doing very well and was playing a leading role in the market. The accumulation zone for many months, over a dozen months, was in the range of $35 to $70, which is not much lower than now, where we have $115, let's say. And at the peak again here, look, we broke out to around $380 after several more months. So those who made money, and the cycle, so to speak, looped. In April 2021, Bitcoin marked its first peak of the double top, pulling the entire altcoin market with it. Litecoin benefited from this pump, but it also had its own catalysts. In fall 2021, PayPal added its 2 cents. It announced support for 4 top cryptocurrencies: Bitcoin, Ether, Bitcoin Cash, and Litecoin, so 300 million users suddenly gained easy access to this cryptocurrency, which certainly helped with the growth. And referring back to 2017, in that bull market, the equivalent of PayPal for Litecoin was Coinbase Exchange, because Litecoin was the third cryptocurrency listed on their platform. So that also gave it a nice boost. Users had 3 cryptocurrencies to choose from for purchase, and one of them was the nominally cheaper Litecoin, which also helped with the growth and pumped up the price. But let's return to 2021, because the all-time high in May 21st, Litecoin reached a level of $415 if you count that week. Spikes are temporary, but that's how it should be counted. On some exchanges, it broke out. It was very brief, but it did happen. It's clear that there's a lack of space to sell at such a high level and liquidity for everyone, but prudent individuals could sell again at amounts around $200. Okay, so multiply by 4, by 5, by 6, by 3 depending on how much was accumulated. So simply put, in any case, it wasn't such an impressive increase. Instead of multiplying by 80 or 60, you could multiply by 5, but still, such a situation occurred. So let's see how it looks in this cycle and what potentially to expect, because I included the weekly interval on the chart here for you. Listen, I also included the previous 2 cycles on the chart here. And in the year 2021, Litecoin indeed managed to surpass its ATH from 2017. And generally, I believe the same should happen in this cycle, especially since ETFs for this cryptocurrency are coming. You might think that this is impossible, but it is potentially as most possible, because 2017 we had Litecoin as the third cryptocurrency on Coinbase. In 2020, it debuted on PayPal, and now in 2025 as the third in history. Also a cryptocurrency. It might turn out that there will be an ETF potentially just in line, and that in the USA, you will be able to buy this Litecoin, where it will also be the cheapest asset, so it can be confidently assumed that investors will have the chance to sell Litecoin for about $300 to $400 at some point in this cycle, and from the current price, that would give roughly 3 times, or about 200% profit. So maybe not 5 times, but 3 times is possible. But you could have bought Litecoin earlier again for $50, $60, $70. So if someone had exhausted it, they could have made 5 to 7 times if the price reached that point. Just like in the previous cycle, I also pointed out to you the 1.618 measurement level of Fibonacci, which sets the price at $640 for Litecoin, but I wouldn't count too much on these levels. We would have to reach all the way here, although hypothetically it is possible. Yes, one shouldn't be too greedy. I believe that at these levels, somewhere here, one should realize profits from Bitcoin, perhaps even below $200, so as not to wait for catching the perfect peak, but also to be interested in further market play. For example, with capital acquired relatively early, if the ETF comes to fruition. This Litecoin story also shows us that long-term, something might come of it. I have pointed out the similarities of Litecoin to silver. Litecoin has a decreasing supply, an unchangeable number of coins, and it has proven that it can survive several bear market periods and return again to some nice values. So these features potentially for people who invest long-term, buying the dips every few months and just setting aside some tokens. Then, Litecoin seems to be right after Bitcoin and Ethereum, the third token that one can confidently collect long-term, even if someone is not in cycles. Cycle after cycle, they want to set aside funds every 2 or 3 months during strong corrections for some token in advance of some token. So these features potentially make Litecoin actually just a good token to definitely choose here. So regarding my approach to Litecoin, how am I? Positions are looking. I am currently on the spot at $110 in Litecoin. Additionally, I have a long position opened at $115. I gave up on one lower position where I had a hedge at $70-something as I don't think will drop low. Litecoin is doing very well. This is leverage times 2+ spot. So sooner or later, I believe we'll reach some nice values. Currently, Litecoin costs $117. There's a small gain on both positions. I even had a profit of several dozen% on that Bitcoin. Unrealized gain from leverage level. I could have hypothetically closed my longs on Bitcoin yesterday at $95,000. I would be up by 80-something% or around 80. So it's great for 2 days. A fantastic entry. But I think that would negatively affect my entry. And then if I entered again, I would have a liquidation at a higher level, despite the fact that I would take a position at 92,000 and could earn something again. So I prefer to hold one position long-term, maybe 2 or 3, when it comes to a few tokens rather than, for example, constantly opening and closing them and always having a higher chance of being liquidated. The funding rate on Bitcoin and Ethereum isn't too high, so I can really handle it calmly and hold on to them. So, speculatively speaking, to sum it up, I just think that basically these new ETFs will be something. Maybe again, if it aligns perfectly with the cycle, it could give us a nice boost, especially at the moment when it is confirmed. Because Litecoin has all the features to simply, in the long term, continue to gain in value. Comparing it to digital silver is not that exaggerated. It has a really relatively well-constructed economy, and if such a narrative holds, if ETFs come into play, it should benefit. Price-wise, and this positive sentiment will also extend to the token. So in my opinion, you can now play based on the event, just like it was. With the Bitcoin Ethereum ETF, the price rose significantly until acceptance, and then we had to sell the news. So this date is not fully known. Listen, if it happens. Not is also not fully known. And as long as the market is low, taking long positions with small leverage once, twice, 3 times and building them lower during declines and accumulation on the spot just subjectively in my mind doesn't seem like a bad idea. So I thank you very much. If you want more about different tokens in this format, with their prospects for the year 25, I warmly invite you to subscribe and let me know what to write about. Next up, care. Thanks, bye.